let's look at team data. Now that we've done the static data, let's set up the team table. So in my team table, I'm going to have the name of the person, their skill set, and their contracted hours. Like so. Now before I turn this into a table, I'm going to set some formatting in here before I create the table. So this is going to be, if I click on home ribbon, it's general. This is going to be general, and I'm going to put some data validation in here. This one is going to be a number. So if I put number there as the format. So let's sort out the data validation. So first of all, let's get the table naming format. So if I do equals table, and I want skill sets, and I want skill, open bracket, close square bracket, and if I hit return, so it's picking up all the skill sets, fine. So if I take that and I just copy it and then press escape to come out of there, I'm just going to delete that formula from there because I don't need it anymore. If I go to the data ribbon with that cell selected and do data validation, like so, I'm going to choose on the settings list, and I'm going to do equals indirect and open quotation marks to define this as text. Put that formula I've copied, close it, quotation marks, and then close bracket and click OK. So that's now picking those up. But I also want to enter some prompts, and if they enter the wrong information in there and it rejects it through the data validation, I want them to know why. So again, within the data validation, and I'm going to do this before I turn it into a table. So go back into that cell and I'm going to do input message, and here I'm going to call the title of that input message as skill set, and say please select a value from drop down list. Like so, and I'm going to do that. I'm going to copy that because I may reuse it and do OK, but I'm also going to do an error message. So stop, when it stops them again, set and say you must use a value from the drop down list and click OK. So now in that cell you can see it. So if I do put Jane Smith in here as my first resource, Jane's going to be a vet. Now if I put Bob there, it should give me an error message. There's the error message, skill set, you must use a value from the drop down. So if I do retry and do a Jane is a senior vet. Senior vet for Jane, contracted hours is 37.5 hours. So that seems to work fine. So I'm going to do Control T, turn it into a table, call this table team on the table design ribbon and hit return. Then I'm going to enter some more values in here. So we've got Fred blogs, Fred's a vet, and as you can see, and Fred's got 37.5 hours. So let's enter the rest of the team in here. And there you go. That's my team members. Expand this, so double click again, like anything in Microsoft, if you double click it will reveal what's in the column or the row. and that's my team now defined. And as you can see, when I'm clicking in here, it's giving me that prompt as well, like so. So I'm now going to look at how we create the team rota. So again, I'm going to build the table out and build the validation, etc., and build the formulas out first before then, so I can see how it's responding and how it's working, and then I will turn it into a table. So the columns that I'm going to have is obviously name, the skill, I want that to be a VLOOKUP based on the name. Then start is, so I want this to be able to, I want the individual to be able to enter a rota based on a single day or on a date range. So that's the way that I'm going to do it. So we've got a start date. I then want to know what that start date is. So do a VLOOKUP so we can see what that day is when we put in their start date in. Then I'm going to put finish, and then finish day. I want to know, are they working on an AM, what activity they're doing on an AM, and then what those hours are, AM hours. And I want to know what is their activity at PM, and again what those PM hours are. I then want to know what total hours I've committed to them. I also want to, for a reference, I want to understand, well, what are their contracted hours per week. Just as a bit of information when I'm entering that data. And then I want to be able to put some comments. So for example, if someone's off sick or they've got planned vacation, I can put some commentary in there. So let me just expand some of these out so I can see the headings, like so. And make that a bit longer when I'm entering into there. So the name is fine. So if I just put Jane Smith as an example here to do my testing. So as far as the skill set's concerned, I want that to be a VLOOKUP based on Jane Smith. And the way that I'm going to do that is do equal VLOOKUP. The value is going to be obviously Jane's name. And the table array is going to be table team. And then Jane's, the column index for the skill is, I believe it's column 2. And I want it to be an exact match. And if I do return, there we go. So that does pull that through. Now, I only want it doing the VLOOKUP if there's if there's data in here. So I'm just going to do a check. I'm going to do an if statement. Now, let's talk about the if statement. So if I do equals if, open bracket, so there's a logical test. So I want to, so the logical test here is if this cell is not blank, then do the VLOOKUP, i.e. if this is true. If it's false, then do this. So if that cell does not equal, and then double quotation marks means a blank, then do the VLOOKUP. So do VLOOKUP that value, comma, table, team, got a bit quick there, and then column 2, you want it to be an exact match. And it's good to look at where you're at in the formula here, and then close bracket. However, if it's false, then just leave it blank, like so. Yeah. Now, so if I put that there, just copy that, go into here and replace that with that. And the reason why I'm not doing a simple, copy that to that, you'll then get a reference. And the reason being is it's moved the cell reference. It's trying to do, so when you do a copy and paste of a formula, unless you've locked down those cell references as absolute references, it will do a relative reference. And because we're moving it, it's looking at a row that's what, 1, 2, 3 above. So that's why I'm copying the formula from the formula bar, control copy, and going into here and then pasting it in the formula bar, so it doesn't do that. It doesn't do that relative association, or it doesn't move it and change it accordingly. And get rid of that. Let's cover what I mean by absolute and relative cell references. And also I want to cover what a range looks like as well, a range of cells, how you do that. So what I've got here is I've got 2 rows of numbers. First row going 1 to 10 and the second row going to 11 to 20. Now if I do an equal sign here, let's say equals B1, like so, and if I copy that and then I want to paste that, what I've done, that formula, into these cells and do Control V, Control Paste, you can see that the original, which was in column, referring to column B, because it moves that column reference relative to where I've pasted it. So here it's column C, D, and so on. And if I was to then take this and drag it down, copy that formula down, you can see it's also moved the row reference relatively. Yeah, so you can see that this is now referring to the row 2 here, like so. So that's a relative reference. Now, what if I wanted to sum these numbers up here and these ranges in a range? So if I do equals sum, open bracket, I then click and drag and copy, select that range of cells and do close bracket and return, is what you can see now is you've got this range here, B4 to K4, like so, within this range here. And the way that you can recognize that range is that you've got B4 colon to K4. And again, if I copy that down, as you can see that the row has moved relative to where I've copied it to. So I've moved it down, I've copied it down by 1 row and it's moved the row relatively. So you can see now that this is selecting this row of numbers. Now, say for example, I wanted to understand the percentage. So what does each one of these represent as a percentage of a total? So if I go here and do equals sum, select these 2 here, like so. So this is my total. So therefore I want to work out the percentage, what percentage of that does that equal? So if I do, so if I just put some total there and I put a percentage here, is this would be, this equals that total divided by the grand total. If I change this to a percentage type like so, you can see it's giving me the percentage. So if I then copy this down, it's giving me an error. And the reason being is if I look at the L4 is divided by L6, so L4 divided by L6 is giving the percentage. If if I look at the next cell where I've copied it down, the L5's right, but what it's done, it's now moved it down that L to L7, and there's nothing there, it's caused an error, and I don't want it to do that. So I want this to always point, so I do a $sign in front of the column reference and a $sign in front of the row reference, and I make that an absolute reference. So now when I copy it down, it gives me proper answer. It doesn't move that L6 reference, it holds it. And that's where the difference between an absolute and a relative reference is concerned. And again, if I wanted to know, again, well, what do these equal as a percentage, say for example, so if I total these up and if I do Alt plus equal sign, it'll cleverly put the sum function there. And again, if I then drag that across, and I've got my totals there, like so. So again, subtotals, expand that. If I want to know what the percentage is of that against this, again, same thing, it would be equals that divided by, and if I hit the cell, that total cell, if I do the function F4 key, function F4, it will then make it an absolute cell reference there. And if I do function F4 again, it then switches it to a row absolute reference and a relative column reference. And again, if I press function 4 again and cycle through that, it then fixes the column reference and makes that absolute, and the row reference is relative. Again, if I do function F4, it takes it off and it becomes a relative. So if I do function F4 again, so it cycles through it like so, and I hit return, make that a percentage, and if I drag that across like so, again, it works out what that percentage reference is. So I'm hoping that's helped you understand the difference between an absolute and a relative reference, and also I've covered off what a range, to recognize a range. So using those $signs to fix the column and the row reference is really useful in formulas, because the whole idea then is that you can point it to a value, and if that value if you hard code that value into your formula, it means then you're going to have to change every single instance of that formula within your spreadsheet. However, if you point it to an absolute reference, you can change it in one cell and it will amend all those formulas automatically and save you a lot of time and a lot of frustration. Hopefully that helps. Now, obviously with Jane Smith, if we put Jane Smith and then accidentally press spacebar, that's going to cause an error. So we don't want people putting something in there that's going to cause an error. So again, we want this to be a data validation. So if I delete that, and you can see that's disappeared because there's nothing in here. So I'm going to do equals table team, open square bracket, we want the name, close square bracket. There we go. So that works. So I'm going to take that part of it and copy it and press escape to come out of it. I'm just going to delete it from there. Then I'm going to do data validation, and again in settings I'm going to do list to the equal sign, indirect, open bracket, quotation marks, place that part of the formula that I just copied, close the quotation marks, and then close bracket. And then I'm going to put here a prompt, select a team member from the drop down. List. And I'm just going to select that, copy, go to the error alert, and again to name. You must select a team member from the drop down list and do OK. And that way then, when I do Jane Smith, it picks it up fine. Start date, if I go to the home ribbon, I'm going to set that as a date, a short date. And again, I'm going to do this formula here where I get the start day. So if I put the 23rd of October in here, I'm then going to do another formula here. So I'm going to do a VLOOKUP. The value I'm going to use is the weekday calculation. So based on that there, like so. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to fix this. In fact, no, that works fine actually. So I'm going to do weekday, serial number. The return type is going to be based on, my Mondays are 0, number 3, and do close bracket. And as far as the column's concerned, it's going to be column 2. And I want an exact match. Oh, does help if you say the type. So always look at what it's telling you here. I almost didn't then. So the table array is table days of the week. Yeah. Column 2, it needs to be an exact match. And then I'm going to do closed bracket and hit return. And there you go, it's got the Monday. Now again, I don't want this doing anything unless there's something in here. So again, I'm going to do an if statement and do if, open bracket, that value does not equal my blank, quotation marks, then do the formula. Otherwise, if false, just leave blank, close bracket and hit return. And there you go. So again, if I delete that there, it will just disappear. And as far as the finish is concerned, I want that to be a short date again. Like so. And I'm just going to put that as the 27th of October, 2-3. And then going to take this, and because I haven't locked anything down, if I apply the same mentality, so I do control copy and I do control V, you'll notice it's just moved these cell references accordingly relative to where I've pasted it to. Yeah. So we've now got our name drop down. We've got a vet skill set VLOOKUP. We've got the date. We've got it doing a VLOOKUP based on the data, so we know what day of the week it is. Now this is going to be the V drop down from the activity types. So as in we need to V drop down, as in it's going to be a data validation drop down. So again, if I go into data and I do data validation, but first of all, let's get the formula right. So I want equal table, and I want the activity, don't I? So I want to know what activity they're doing. So this is the one I want, table types of activity. So double click on that, open square bracket, I want types, like so, close square bracket, and there you go. So that's what I want. So again, I'm just going to copy that, Control copy, escape, then delete that from there. And then if I go into data validation, I do my list equals indirect, open bracket, quotation marks, paste in what I just copied, and then close bracket. And the reason why I type the formula out first is to make sure that it works, I'm getting the right thing, and I've typed it correctly, and then I just paste it in. I find that a lot easier personally. And then I click OK. So that's now got the drop down. So let's put the prompts in there as well. So let's go data validation. So input. So this is going to be AM. Please select an activity from the drop down. And again, just copy that, copy, then in here for the alert, if I put something wrong in there, you must Control V, select an activity from the drop down and click OK. Now I should be able to just do a Control copy there and do a Control V there, and all I've got to do is go into that data validation now and just change this to PM and PM and do OK, and there we go. So now set these up. So once these have been populated, yeah, I want this to calculate the work. Now what I want it to do is I want it to calculate the work if it's working. If it's not work, then I just want it to be a 0. Yeah, I don't want anything else to be in here, because all I'm trying to understand when I'm entering the data in here is how much work am I allocating to them when I'm putting them in the rota. As far as absence or vacation, etc., then I don't care for this particular point of entry. So what I'm going to do here is if I just put working here, so what I want to do is, first of all, I want to do a lookup on AM hours, yeah, if this is working. So if I do equals VLOOKUP, now the value that I'm looking at is not this. I'm looking up a value AM. If I just escape out of that, if we go back to our static data and we look at our table, when you're doing a VLOOKUP, it's always using the first column. So you must have unique values in there. It's looking at that value, and when it finds it, it then looks to whatever you said the column is to look at. So in this instance, it'll be column number 2. It will then pull that value through. So that's why I'm using AM and PM here to find the value. Because if I change this here, then it doesn't mean I've got to go and change a load of individual formulas. It will just automatically pick up the value that I put in here. Yeah, so I can change it in here and it will automatically pick that up as a change. So if I go back to my Rota data here, then I'm going to do equals VLOOKUP. So my value is going to be the column title. So I'm going to select that, and then I'm going to press function F4. Now at the moment, you'll notice it's put a $sign in front of the column reference and a $sign in front of the row reference. I want this, because I want to be able to copy what I put in here, is I want this to only fix the row reference. So I'm going to press function 4 again, and you can see now the dollar in front of the column has disappeared, but I've got a $sign which fixes the row, so it's an absolute reference. So that's my value. And my table that I'm looking up is going to be table. It's AM, PM hours. Like so. And I want to pull through column 2. And it has to be an exact match. If I do close that, you'll notice it's pulled some hours. So I'm going to set this format here. So again, on the home ribbon, I'm going to set that to a number. Now I could go right click on that cell and do format cell and then just select number there. I just like doing it through there. So I'm just going to click OK. Right, so again, I don't want it doing this unless there's something in here, but there's more to this formula, because if it doesn't equal working, I don't want it calculating. Yeah, so I don't want it calculating anything in here. So, and also if it's blank, I don't want it calculating, but I only need to do one check here. So if I do, if this cell reference here, yeah, if that cell reference H2 equals open quotation marks. If you're referring to something that's text, you must put it in quotation marks. So I'm going to go working. So if it's true, do that calculation. If it's false, then I'm just going to ask it to put a 0 there, like so, and press return. So if I change this to something other than, it goes to 0. Now the other thing here is that if this is blank, I don't want it doing anything at all. I want it to just leave this as a blank. Yeah, so what I'm going to do is put another check in here, and I'm going to do two checks here. So if this here, by Jane Smith, yeah, does not equal that, then I'll say continue to do this. However, if it is blank, then just leave it blank, like so. And I'm going to fix that column because I want to be able to copy the formula. So instead of hitting function 4, I'm just going to put a $sign in front of the column and hit return. So what I've done here is, first of all, it's checking to see if there's anything in here, and if there's something in there, then it's going to check to see if it's got work in there, and if it's got work, it'll do the lookup against that value there. If it's not work, it's just going to put it to 0. So if I put that to working, it's now calculated it. Yeah. So if I take this now and I do a control copy and I copy it to here, control V, you can see now it's just left this as a 0 because there's nothing in there. And if I put vacation, it's 0, but as soon as I put working in there, it's then looked it up against that. And again, remember, I've done the copy and paste, so I only made the row fixed. So within the actual formula here, I fixed the row, but I didn't fix the column, so it's able to move it relatively. So it's now looking at PM instead of AM. Hopefully that makes sense. And then finally is, again, once this is that's been populated, I'm going to say this equals, so if that column there does not equal, because I'm not going to copy this anywhere else, I'm not fixing the formula, or I'm not fixing the column, etc., is that I simply want it to add these two values up. So I'm going to go, if it's been populated, I'm going to go that plus that. Otherwise, just leave it blank and return. And again, I'm just going to set this to a number like so. Now, the other thing that I'm going to put in here is, remember I wanted to see what their contracted hours are, and then see if you spot the mistake in here as well. So I'm going to go into here and do equals if that does not equal blank, then do a VLOOKUP. The value is going to be the name, and the table array is going to be the team. The column is going to be column 3, and I want an exact match like so, and close that. If it is blank, I'm just going to leave this blank here like so. Hit return. And again, I'm going to make that a number. So what you'll notice here is when I'm doing this form, this is where it's good to just test your logic here, is it's only calculating the hours for one day. It's not calculating it based on the fact that they're working Monday to Friday. So Monday to Friday is 5 days. So I need to multiply this value here. If it does a lookup, I need to multiply it by whatever number of days this period is. Now, how do I get the number of days? So the formula here is going to be, well, obviously that minus that. So if I go equals this date, finish date minus the start date, it gives me 4. And if I make this the 23rd of October, you then say 0, because obviously the same value minus the same value is going to be 0. And if I put the 24th of October in here, we get a 1, but we know it's 2 days. So obviously what I've got to put in this formula is plus 1. And there we go. So what I've got to do now is I've got to take that here. So if I control copy that, and I go into this, and I've got to add it within the VLOOKUP. After the VLOOKUP, so I've got the actual number of hours. I then want to times it. So do an asterisk, which is the times operator within Excel. I'm going to do an open bracket, Control V, close bracket. Yeah. And I'm going to make these again, as far as the columns, I'm going to fix the columns, so I can copy this. So if I go $sign in front of that column, and I do a $sign in front of that column, and hit return. So again, if it's working, find the value, the number of hours from the AM PM hours, and then times that by the number of days that we've just calculated. So if I hit return there, it then calculates it appropriately. And again, if I do control copy, I can then paste that into the PM, and that works out that appropriately. So now if I type in the 27th of October, it's now calculating the number of hours AM and PM appropriately and saying that's 37 hours, and it's 37 hours that are contracted. So looking at that now, I'm happy with the way that's working. Yeah, and that's working fine. So now that I'm happy with it, I'm going to do Control T, and I'm going to turn it into a table. So I now know those formulas, and the formatting and the validation that I've created is going to copy down. Now, what I'm going to do here as well is where I've got VLOOKUPs, because you can't protect cells, you can't stop people overwriting formulas, so you need to put some kind of visual prompt in here. So what I'm going to do is, if on the home tab, I'm just going to use this here and say, right, That's calculated. That's calculated. Just so we know, that's calculated, and these are also calculated. Yeah, just so when we're going down now, so if I then go and enter another row, it should copy that formatting down for me. And it's just a visual prompt to say, right, I know that those are calculated, so I shouldn't be overwriting that formula, and that's just something to make a note of. So if I put Fred blogs in here, it's picked up Fred. Again, I'm going to put 23rd. It's a Monday. Fred. It's October. It's a Friday. And Fred's going to be working on the AM, but he's not going to be working in the afternoon, so I'm going to put that as a vacation. So there you can see it, contracted hours. I'm just going to put Fred on holiday in afternoons, just so I've got something as a note there for me. And again, let me just put some information in here for the team. And there you go. So I've got some values entered in here, and also just again visually I'm just going to get rid of the grid lines. So on the view tab ribbon, unselect grid lines, and there you go. So I can now see my data entry. So that is the Rota entry completed. Let me just expand this column so I can see everything in there, and so on. Now the good thing about this is that you can filter now in that table based on the names. I can even filter on start dates, so I can filter on periods as well, so I can look at information, and you can also sort it as well. So that's a really useful view. So that's for entering my team Rota. So that's the data. The next thing we need to look at is the actual view, the two-week Rota view. So we'll look at that next.